Bradders No Nonsense Hits, only on Vitalise Radio, the voice of Torfaen.
Well, we have a very special interviewee on the show today. He's a Welsh legend that is known for hits such as Dream Out Loud and The Border, as well as many musicals and his exceptional singing talent. It's the one and only Mal Pope. Welcome to the show, Mal.
Hey, great to be with you.
It's lovely having you. How are you?
Very good. Yeah, it's a busy couple of weeks, to be honest. Working on a new Christmas video and single, which maybe we can talk about later. The last single is sort of coming to climax with various radio stations, and I'm currently making a film for the Welsh Football Association of Wales about a lady called Esme Allchurch, who was married to Ivor Allchurch, who was part of the 1958 World Cup Wales team. So lots going on. No wonder I haven't got any hair left yet. No wonder. I pulled it out years ago.
Oh gosh, it sounds like you've had a very busy few weeks then. What's happening with the Football Association then? How did you get into that?
Well, it's one of those things. I as well as making sort of records, I make TV programs and films and stuff. I made a big feature film about Swansea City and their journey to the Premier League. And I'd had this idea up my sleeve for a long time. Esme Allchurch, she's 88 years old, but she's a great football pundit. And I see her every home game for Swansea City because I look after the lounge that she sits in. We always have a chat about the game. And I've been championing her for many, many years. And at last, somebody says this is a good idea. So we've made a 10-minute film all about her memories of her husband going to the World Cup in 1958 and how different it is for her generation compared with, all the stuff that's going on. We know their inside leg measurements these days, don't we? And there's beamed back from Qatar by the second. So, the only information she had in 1958 was a postcard saying they'd arrived. That was it. Wow. That was it.
Yeah. And are we allowed to know when that video is coming out, or is it hush-hush?
Yeah, no, that video comes out. Well, I suppose it's the World Cup starts, was it on a Monday? So it's this is going to be coming out as the World Cup commences, really. So the video should be available online in the next couple of days.
Oh, wow. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that, and we'll make sure to share that with our viewers as well. I think it's time to speak about your past because you have a very interesting past, as far as I know. Did you have a musical or theatrical upbringing?
I came from a chapel background, really, gospel hall. So I suppose you could say it was theatrical and musical because, there were preachers there and there were people singing, particularly at Christmas time. But in our church, my grandmother used to play the pump harmonium. My mum used to play piano in the Sunday school. So there was lots of music in the house and in chapel as well. And on a Sunday morning, they didn't have any musical instruments. So you actually just sang a cappella. So Uncle Dan would stand at the front. He'd pitch the hymn and everybody would start to sing and they'd sing in harmony. We had a really good church for singing in harmony. And I sort of, even from a little kid, really, I sort of found my harmony notes and joined in. And that's been a godsend for my career because I've been doing backing vocal sessions, I think, I'm sure you'll mention Fireman Sam. Yeah, I'm sure you will. But one of the reasons I did things like Fireman Sam was they booked me for the lead vocal and I did all the backing vocals as well. So I was cheap and I still am.
Oh, wow. You say that an influence to your career was John Peel. So how did that opportunity to meet him arise?
So I was writing songs from the age of 9 and then playing them either in school or in the youth club. And one of my big brother's friends, Mike Nicholson, sadly no longer with us, he said, you should send these to John Peel on Radio 1. And to be honest, I'd never heard of John Peel on Radio 1 because his show started at 10 o'clock and I was 11, 12 years old. He's past my bedtime. So anyway, I made a tape. And on my dad's tape recorder of the songs that I'd written, and I sent it off to him and his producer, and I think they were horrified, a 12-year-old Welsh singer-songwriter. Anyway, they found a special tape recorder because the tape machine my dad had was so old. They found a special machine, played it, and they must have liked it or been intrigued by it. So they wrote to me asking me if my dad could ring them to let me go on their radio program. It's called Sounds of the 70s. And I went up to London with my brothers, did a session, recorded my songs. And then 6 weeks later, Elton John phoned the house and I signed to his record company, his new record company called Rocket Records.
Well, that is, I think not many people could say they had Elton John phone in their house.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So are there any other musical inspirations that helped shape your passion for music at all?
Well, the thing is, because Elton was around, he was he's my boss, my record company boss, and he was my record producer at one stage. So I remember, we recorded together at Abbey Road and stuff like that. I used to go and stay at his house. So Elton was a massive musical influence. But the thing was, I was being produced by people like Gus Dudgeon. Gus produced all of Elton's albums. He produced Chris Rea, Elkie Brooks. He was the most successful record producer, I suppose, of the middle 70s. And he was my record producer. So I'd be in the studio with him. You know, one minute he'd be working on my records, next minute he'd be working on Elton John. I remember falling asleep at the end of one session, waiting for the tapes to come in from America, and it was Elton John and John Lennon recorded singing Saw Her Standing There. I sort of missed the session because I was asleep at the back of the studio, but I was mixing with that level, you know, the best in the business. And so they all influenced me one way or another.
Yes, of course. I think we can't pass this section without asking, what is Elton John like?
Smashing. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, if you've seen the film, you know what he's been through. But he was incredibly kind and supportive when I was a kid. And you know, you see that in other musicians that he's championed along the way. It was my turn in the early 70s. It's been Ed Sheeran's and it's been, you know, Britney Spears since. So I'm in good company. But he's got a great heart. But the other thing is he's Elton John, so he can't be completely normal, you know, because nobody will treat him as normal. So the fact that he's still alive, I think, shows what a strong character he is. And he's made millions for the AIDS Foundation, and he gives a lot of stuff to charity that nobody knows about. So he's a good man.
Yes, well, I think many people will agree that the music that's come from Elton John is amazing, but you can see that it's also come out with your records as well. It's kind of that influence has really helped to bring out the best.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, the thing is, the only problem about making music when I was so young is I was easily influenced.
Yes.
So maybe it's taken me until this great age to actually find out who I really am. You know, I was a kid for a long time. And that's hard to get to that mindset, you know, where you think everybody else knows best, you know, and then suddenly you grow up and you realize nobody knows really what's going on. They just, everybody's making it up. No, it's, it was a great learning experience, and I'll always treasure those memories.
Well, as we're on the topic of music, I think it's only fair that we mention your single, Dream Out Loud. That's the main part of your life at the moment, although you have got a new single coming out, as you mentioned. But it's Dream Out Loud featuring the Memphis Choir. So what inspired you to write that song?
It's a long story, but let me see if I can condense it. I used to go to Tupelo in Mississippi to judge the Elvis Presley Songwriting Festival. It happened by accident. I was out there making a TV show. A lady called Pat Raspberry said, "Oh, Mal, you've got a lovely voice. And would you like to come and judge our festival?" And I said, "Of course." You know, never expecting them to send me a ticket. And so in the early 2000s, I used to go there every year. I had a great time, met all of Elvis's family that was still alive. Sadly, I think most of those are passed now as well. But I met a guy in Memphis called the Reverend Samuel Billy Kyles. He was at the forefront of the civil rights movement. He invited Martin Luther King to Memphis in 1968 for the garbage workers strike and spent the afternoon with him in the Lorraine Motel. He tells the story of being there all afternoon, waiting for people like Jesse Jackson to come back because they were doing rallies. Jesse Jackson, the civil rights leader. He says, Martin Luther King looks down from the balcony when Jesse Jackson comes home to Lorraine Motel. He says, "Jesse, you ain't ready for dinner at Billy's house. You ain't dressed for dinner." He said, "No, but I'm wearing my appetite." And then at that moment, Billy goes back to the telephone to ring home because they're all coming to the church for dinner. He hears this shot. He turns around and sees his friend fall to the ground, Martin Luther King, and he wraps him in a blanket and he saw the life drain out of him. But the other story that really made it the song was that if you see the Lincoln Memorial speech, where it's Martin Luther King and 250,000 people, and he says, if you listen to the speech, he's talking about economics and they're getting bored. You know, they're starting to shuffle and starting to talk. Martin Luther King, the greatest orator of his generation, and people are getting bored because he's talking about economics. A couple of weeks before, he'd been at a church rally. Mahalia Jackson, the gospel singer, had been with him, and he'd been preaching. He just started preaching. He started saying things like, I dream of my children being judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. And he just went off on one. Anyway, so back to the scene. Lincoln Memorial, 250,000 people. Martin Luther King, the greatest orator of his generation, and 250,000 people are getting bored. And behind him is the singer Mahalia Jackson. And she's going, "Martin, tell him about the dream. Tell him about the dream." And that's when he makes the speech, which he has preached on before. He puts his notes away. And I always say economics is important, particularly as my generation have screwed up this world. And I hope you get it right, Ieuan. But economics is important, but it's always important to share the dream.
Yes. There's always things to learn from the past generations as well, to stop things coming back around, such as this catastrophe that we're in at the moment.
Don't do it again.
Yeah.
Learn from the mistakes of your parents, your grandparents. There we are.
Yes. Well, that was just a touching story, and you don't really see the touching stories behind songs when they're just played on the radio, but we're so glad to have you here talking about it, because then our listeners know what goes into writing a song, which not many people get to do unless you're talented, and your talents don't end there, do they, Mal? I've heard you've got a new single out this Christmas. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've been working with a lady called Bronwyn Lewis. Now, Bronwyn's done amazing work with the Welsh language. She started sort of recording English versions of Welsh versions of English language hits and putting them onto TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. And they went viral. And then Greg James picked her up on Radio 1, and she's touring around the country now, selling out theatres. I think she was in the Congress Theatre recently and sold out. And every year I've been involved in a charity called Everyone Deserves a Christmas. It's a case of raising money for hampers, Christmas hampers, for people who won't have a Christmas otherwise, or will have a very poor Christmas otherwise. And last year I did a single with a chap called Steve Balsamo, and we did a video which included people like Michael Sheen and Catherine Zeta-Jones and Davina McCall. They were all in this video. And I thought, how do we top that this year? And I thought, let's go back to our roots. Let's do it's a version of Away in a Manger, but we do it in Welsh and English, so I Orwedd mewn preseb. And it's lovely to sing with Bronwyn. But then I got a 30-piece youth orchestra, and then I got a thing called the Valley Rock Voices Choir, which is nearly 200 ladies, all dressed in red. And they're all on the record, and then they were all in the video as well. And the video's coming out, well, that'll be out next week, and then the single comes out on the 2nd of December. So it's part of an album. The album's called Christmas with the Pope and Friends. So it's got 12 tracks on it, and all the money will be going to this Everyone Deserves a Christmas hamper charity. So the thing is, you never know. You put these records out, and making money out of records is very difficult. But so I always say we're raising funds, but we're raising awareness of the charity, and then encouraging people. If you like the video, if you like the music, but you don't want to buy it because you can get it for free on streaming, why not give a £5 or a £10 to the Just Giving page? And last year I think we made about 20 grand. Not from selling records, but from people liking the record and giving money to Just Giving. So that was fantastic.
Well, if our listeners want to listen to your new single, it's coming out on the 2nd of December, as you just said. So I urge every one of our listeners to go and listen to it and just donate some money, even if it's just to raise awareness, just donate some money, and it all goes to a good cause.
Fantastic.
Well, you've had many successful records over the years. Which one was your favourite to record?
I suppose, one of the ones with Elton John, particularly, recording at Abbey Road with Elton John in the 70s when he was the biggest artist. I mean, he's pretty big now, isn't he? But he was the biggest artist on the planet then. I mean, the week before the recording session, he'd got me tickets to the FA Cup final, Liverpool versus Manchester United. It's a great game. Jimmy Case got a fantastic volley. And then I went back to stay at the house and planned the recording session. But because my parents were both teachers, I didn't leave school to become a rock star. I used to go, so I'd stay with Elton John, go to the FA Cup final, go back to school from Monday to Thursday, get the train on Friday morning, go up to London, get to Abbey Road, and suddenly I'm in this, legendary studio where the Beatles recorded with Elton John and an orchestra. I mean, and I'm playing the piano, So that was pretty memorable. But things like the Dream Out Loud session lately. I mean, I like visiting the past, but I don't want to live there. It's nice to remember these stories, but I'm more excited about the video we recorded 2 weeks ago with Valley Rock Voices and Bronwyn Lewis, than maybe the Elton John thing, or recording with the gospel choir for Dream Out Loud, because it's I'm still excited about what might happen in the future and what is possible to create working with people, and it's all about collaborating and building up a good relationship with people to be able to ask them to get involved in projects, and so I am very lucky that way.
Yes, I'm sure you've noticed that even though, like you said, you don't want to live in the past, even the future is bringing some exciting things to, like, artists such as Dua Lipa or even Bronwyn. They're bringing new talent to the music industry, whereas they could become the next kind of Elton John level of talent kind of thing.
Exactly. I mean, who would have thought, Elton, slightly overweight, podgy, losing his hair, glasses. Who'd have thought Ed Sheeran? You never know. With Adele, I remember playing Adele's records, Chasing Pavements, and they were great. I loved them. You never thought she'd go stellar.
Yeah.
So you just, who knows? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Well, we need to visit your past quickly, if that's okay, to mention a very special moment for my childhood and maybe many others for that part. Of course, your role within Fireman Sam, which you touched upon earlier. But how did you become the singer of the Fireman Sam theme tune?
Well, I'd already done Super Ted, as it happens, because obviously S4C was set up making Welsh language programs, but they needed to try and sell programs as well. It was hard to sell programs in Welsh in those days, although it seems to be a bit easier now because all the Scandi stuff, people don't mind reading subtitles anymore.
Yeah.
In those days, they did. So, how do you make programs that you can sell around the world? Well, make an animation, make a cartoon, make a stop animation, because then you can do it in any language. And so, S4C got very, very good at that. Super Ted, Shoe People, Pablo Trace, Skidyear was called. I did a whole pile of them. And Fireman Sam was just another one, to be honest. I did the demo with a couple of lads called Hennigan and Lawson, the Mad Professors. And then they said, well, we got the gig. Let's record it properly. So we did. And that did go stellar. That went all around the world and still does. My YouTube page gets more clicks for Fireman Sam than it does for Dream Out Loud, which is slightly disappointing, but I'm sure I can work on that.
Yeah.
And it's, people do, almost every week people will email and say, it was part of my childhood. Thanks for singing the song. And I do sing it sometimes in public, but what do they say? Do you do requests only when asked? So I did it where was I the other day? In the Park and Dare in Treorchy. And someone asked for it. So I did sing a bit of it then. So it's funny because my kids were slightly embarrassed when they were kids in school that their dad sang Fireman Sam, and now I think even they think it was pretty cool. So it's funny how things change, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Having Fireman Sam as part of your career, although it would be seen as silly, it's still a big part of your career, and it's done wonders.
Exactly. That's the thing. It's easy to say no to stuff. Saying no is easy. When you say yes, you never know what you're taking. I got through to the Song for Europe final. Yeah. Me, Terry Wogan, and 17 million people, and almost came last. At the time, it was devastating. But you never know where these things lead. And in fact, Elton John gave me all my songs back a couple of years ago, and the person I spoke to get the songs back, I met through Eurovision. He became Elton John's publisher. So, contacts and meeting people, someone said it's all about who you know as a pejorative statement. And then they said, well, just go and meet people, go and say hello, work with people. And I think like what you've done today, you've, as the Americans say, you've reached out, you sent me an email asking for an interview. And now, we're in a network. So when you do your next thing, I'll hear about it, and next time I got a new single out, I'll say, So it's all about meeting people. So don't be afraid to, because all they can do is say no. I usually have in the past and probably will in the future say yes if I can. I always say yes if I can do it. I will. If I can't, I'm really sorry.
Yes, of course. And networking is such a big part of every career, but especially in the music, theatre, and media industry, of course. And from those, just contacting one person, you get more work, or you suddenly find you meeting people that have power, and then you're led on to the next thing. So that is really important to network. And as a young person as well, learning that from an early age has helped me as well. So
don't be shy. Don't be shy.
Of course. In terms of musicals, because you've written, produced, and directed many of them over the years, such as Amazing Grace or Cappuccino Girls, where do you get your inspiration for writing musicals like those?
Yeah, usually the inspiration was being unemployed. It's like, how on earth am I going to make a living? I got 4 kids. I know, I'll write a musical. And it's sort of the first one almost happened just like that, walking down the road and thinking, what on earth am I going to do? Because, your musical career goes like this, and your radio career goes like this, and you have to think, what am I going to do next? And I thought, well, I'll write a musical. And about the Welsh revival, a thing called the Welsh Religious Revival from 1904, I thought, if you're going to write a musical about Wales, hymn singing would be good. But it wasn't just a musical of hymns. I took the tunes and maybe twisted them a bit, and worked with a director called Michael Bogdanov, who was an Olivier Award-winning director. And we did the tour twice, and the second time we sold out the Wales Millennium Centre.
Wow.
So yeah, and the next one was about a boxer called Tommy Farr, because I was trying to think, I'd sort of, because we'd got on quite well with the musical about the revival and sold out the Welsh Millenniums, and there was the next one. Well, Evan Roberts was 1904. Then Tommy Farr was a boxer from the Rhondda who fought in Yankee Stadium with Joe Louis in 1937. So I thought that's the next one, next Welsh hero that we've forgotten about.
Yeah.
And then I realized that actually when you put a musical on stage with 20 people and 8 people in the orchestra and an articulated truck, you need a heck of a lot of money. So for Cappuccino Girls, I wrote it for 5 people. And one guy plays every part, and so it's like you learn if you want to do stuff. Sometimes you have to, you have to vary your path, because you can't always get that big chunk of money to do a massive musical. So we'll find another way,
Yes.
It's, you have to be creative in getting work done as well.
Yes. We have a question from one of our listeners, if you're willing to answer it.
Come on, right on.
They say that your musical Amazing Grace is the best they've ever seen, and would like to know if it is making a return anytime soon.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I would love it to. And in fact, on the recent tour that I've been doing, which actually was planned for 2020, but we're finally finishing it off in Ystrad the end of November in 2022 because of COVID.
Yes.
I do a couple of songs from the musical, and it's getting a good reaction. The only trouble is, it depends what scale you want to do it at. It costs literally hundreds of thousands of pounds to put on a musical of that scale with that many people. So it's still alive, because it's not dead.
Yes. Yeah.
Whether it'll come back anytime soon, I don't know. Stranger things have happened. That's the lovely thing about it. All the musicals I've written could, in the right circumstances, and you never know. You never know what the next phone call. I nearly took it to Minneapolis. When it first came out and didn't quite work out. But the same producer then wanted Cappuccino Girls, and that nearly got to Minneapolis. I went out there a number of times. I was going to move out there in 2008, and the credit crunch hit, so that was a no. But it's like you never know. You never know. As I said, he rang up and said, "Do you want to come to Minneapolis?" I said yes, and I was in Minneapolis 4 days later talking about Cappuccino Girls. That was in 2008, yeah, it was 2008. So, you never know how these things work out. But always, if you can say yes, you never know.
And it's funny where life takes you sometimes. You don't expect it, and suddenly it comes out of the blue.
Yeah.
But yes. As a young person, I think it's appropriate to ask this. What words of advice would you give to someone that's wanting to get into the theatre industry as maybe a writer or a producer?
You got to start somewhere. You can't wait for the doors to open up without you pushing them. You've got to. I didn't go to college to learn how to write a musical. I just thought, well, I'll just start writing. And then I looked at tutorials and I read some bits and bobs, but I didn't, you've got to start. If you want to be a writer, write. If you want to be a director, then find a group. If you're a young person, a youth group, work with them. There's a lot of youth theatre groups around, and take that lead. It's funny, broadcasting is a funny thing as well. You can practice as much as you like, but you got to do it.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like that with gigs, music. You can tell people who've done a lot of concerts because they look match fit. They look good in front of an audience. Or if you're ready to present in front of a microphone, you've got to do it. So I want to say, push doors. Don't be afraid to push yourself forward. Don't be shy. Don't take rejection personally, which is very hard. But don't take rejection, because you will get knocked. And it's funny, actually, from one of the musicals about the boxer, I learned a very strong lesson. It was we had a boxing expert on called Mario Macronelli. His son Enzo was world middleweight champion, I think, early 2000s. And Mario was a fantastic Italian, and he'd been Enzo's trainer. And he said, "Mal, we all take a punch. And when you take a punch, you go down on one knee, you put your arm on the ropes, and you count to 8. Then you get back up." Because when you take a punch, when you get rejected, when you go to an audition, you don't get the part, when somebody turns your music down, it hurts. It's like a punch. It's like physical sometimes. So don't try and just go on with it. Just count for 8. Kneel, take the kneel, arm on the rope. Just get yourself back and running. But don't get knocked out. Don't go to 10 and get out of the game. Get up at 8 and start again. So that would say be persistent, persistent.
Wise words from a legend.
Very old man. A very old man.
Oh, don't beat yourself up, Mal. As you may know, Welsh legends such as Mike Doyle, Kevin Johns and Kay Dupree, you may have worked with some of them even.
All of them?
Your life.
Yeah.
Yes. And they've become stars of Welsh pantomimes.
Yes.
So I'd like to ask you, would you ever do a pantomime?
Well, yes, he would. Oh no, he wouldn't. I don't think I would. And I can understand the appeal of it. I mean, I look terrible in a dress, and I'm not a leading boy or a leading man or whatever they are these days, a principal boy. So I don't think. I mean, never say never. I don't know, but nobody's ever asked, and that's one of the things I've never sort of like pushed to do. So, well, definitely not this Christmas.
Oh, that's a shame, but I'm sure there'll be loads of people that want to see you in a frock or a wig. So what upcoming projects do you have in the pipeline that we can look forward to?
So the new Christmas single will take us up to Christmas, pushing that, I take on various pluggers for different radio stations, different type of radio and TV. So we've just done the video. The video's just been finished off. It finished off last night at midnight. And then the film about Esme Aldrich for Football Association of Wales, that should get finished off tonight, because it's got to be delivered by midday tomorrow. So so I'm actually working on that. I'm working on the sound behind the sound design of that particular film at the moment. And then the new year, who knows? It's a clean sheet. We start again and we see where life will take us. But always exciting, and never boring.
Never boring, no, not of course. And the life of Mal Pope sounds very exciting, actually. Well, Mal, thank you for taking the time to do this interview. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you, because I appreciate that you're a busy man, of course, as you've just proved. We hope you'll come back to join us in the future. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to speak to you soon.
Well, thanks for your support, and all the very best to Bradders No Nonsense Hits.
Thank you, Mal.
Bradders No Nonsense Hits, only on Vitalise Radio.